So our next two panelists, Joe Nathan and Camilla Weeks, I'm going to ask them to come up. Joe is the director of the Center for School Change in Minnesota. He has also worked tirelessly as an advocate for school choice and for school business partnerships in the state and across the country. He helped write the nation's first charter school law, and in his role at the Center for School Change has done a lot of work to lead public-private partnerships in the state. Cami Luigs from General Electric oversees their work, their grant program focused on strengthening Atlanta's schools. She has overseen millions and millions of dollars in grants to schools to help foster public-private partnerships to support on-the-job learning for both teachers and students. And when I talked to her on the phone before today, I asked her, after hearing of all the great things she did, is it possible to clone you? So
Thank you.
Hopefully, I know you'll feel the same way. So if you two could come up. And we will get to the video. Joe will introduce the video as part of his remarks. I know that's on the agenda.
When Stephanie asked if we would be a part of this, it was quite an honor to do so. What my day job is on behalf of GE and the GE Foundation, which is the company's wholly owned 501c3. One of the focus areas that we work on is in education, and particularly in K-12 education, supporting public school systems. And for many years, we've been, well, for over 50 years, the GE Foundation has been supporting public schools. And in the past, maybe 6 or 7 years, GE has taken on what's called a district focus, where we will support districts across the United States. And one of the common themes of all of them is that we support districts in communities where we have large GE businesses. And so my day job is to support a $22 million grant that the GE Foundation gave to the Atlanta Public Schools 3 years ago. And we are halfway through that grant, and halfway through in terms of time and money. And when I was speaking with Lauren and Kristen about some of the work that we've done, they asked me to kind of share that with you in hopes that it is of interest, or maybe it will spark some great dialogue and great thinking, and I'm pretty confident that this group can do it. And so a couple of the things that we focus on in the grant itself is, along with seeking to have there be very rigorous and high quality math and science curriculum, we support a lot of PD around that so that teachers can be the most effective that they can be. Because one of our sincere beliefs is that teachers genuinely want to teach kids to the highest level that they can, and we really want to support that, because after our money's gone, the teachers will be there, and if they can be the best teachers they possibly can be when it comes to math and science, we think that the students that come out of these schools hopefully will find the work as sexy and interesting in math and science as we do on the GE side. So that's kind of the overall goal. And so along with these grants, in terms of helping the districts, help them find, or offer ways to improve the curriculum and the PD, we have two other areas, and this is a little bit more of where maybe the Innovation Fund ideas can help. We have a GE volunteer component where people from the business, employees from the business, work in schools in different capacities, in mentoring and reading. Sometimes it's with hands-on Atlanta type activities where we're cleaning playgrounds and painting gyms. It takes on all different kinds of flavors. And one particular area that we found very interesting, and this is truly in a pilot stage, okay? So the results are still in the future because we are in the middle of this project. About 2 years ago, one of the questions that we kept hearing teachers be asked, and they asked for us to help them think about it, is answering the question when the student comes to them, usually in late middle school or high school, when am I ever gonna use this knowledge of applying a quadratic equation? When am I ever gonna use it? Or when am I ever gonna use the understanding of the elements on the periodic table, for example? Or why do I need to study radium? Who cares about radium? And And so what we tried to do was to come up with an idea that we stole shamelessly, and that's one of the things that we really like to do, is steal great ideas and adapt them. Not on the business side, of course, so anybody who's doing that, but in the philanthropic side, we like to do that. What we did is we looked at the model that the Georgia Tech gift program had, where they have, I don't know how many of you are familiar, it's a super, super program where they allow teachers to work in industry during the summer and apply different learnings in the business sector. Well, we kind of took that and tailored it, and we tried to scale it so that maybe this is something teachers can do during the school year and with their kids. So this is the concept that we're in the middle of working on. So I said, literally, we're in the middle of this. We developed a case study that's targeting math and science teachers, preferably, we think, probably 8th grade and above. And we developed a case study that we are working with teacher teams, math and a science teacher together in the same grade. And we said, all right, this is how GE works. Maybe you will find this interesting, and it will begin to answer some of those questions. When will I ever use the math or the science principle? And the case study goes something like this. You are the Secretary of Energy of your country. And we, on GE, we developed a model for 4 or 5 different countries, usually one on each continent, and the state of Georgia is its own country. And we said, you have $750 million, your population is X number of people, your projected growth is Y, your energy demand is currently A, and we expect it to be B, and what kind of energy technology do you need to have available and build in your country in order to meet the needs of your population? This is not unlike what GE does, GE Energy, our local business here, does on a daily basis. And so we developed this case where we first take the teachers through kind of a primer on finance. How does a company actually run and make money? So, because we didn't think it was very fair if the teachers don't have that background knowledge. And then we have 4 different modules that follow, which is the first module of how do you choose technology. And the suite of technology that GE Energy offers is both renewable and, well, there's a whole composite. We have gas turbines, steam turbines, coal-fired, wind turbines, solar energy, nuclear power, oil and gas, I mean, methane, you can imagine the whole suite. And we brought the teachers to Greenville, South Carolina, which is where we have a gas turbine manufacturing plant. We had them look and see what a gas turbine actually looks like, so that as they choose this, what does it look like and how can it be applied? The second step is to work, and we're in the middle of this right now, to work with Georgia Power, Southern Company, which is a customer, and take the teachers to a real live power plant and have them actually look at what they would in the case be studying. And then eventually the next step will be to service it, just like if you buy a car, it needs an oil change and all those kinds of things. And then the 4th step would be to grow. 3 or 5 years from now, what do you need to do in order to add on technology or emissions changes or things like that? And the intent was to have the teacher teams work on this and have real live examples of math and science in industry. And then maybe that they could bring their kids along. And so Georgia Tech is a partner with us at APS, and some of the folks there in the seismic group, Donna Whiting and Neva Rose, took our case study and they applied the pieces to the Georgia performance standards for us, because clearly that's not our competency. So that the teachers would learn if they could take whatever piece of the case study was and apply it to what they had to do during that week. It wasn't something in addition to their regular work, because we didn't want this to be, we didn't want it to be extra, because we really want to honor teacher time and the fact that they have an enormous job. They just didn't need something else piled on top of them. And so that's our thinking, is that maybe there's ways that they can engage kids in this. If the model works, which we will know maybe if we run it a couple of times, we'll see if this actually works. Maybe there are other companies that would be willing to create a case like this with their application, whether it be Home Depot or UPS or Coca-Cola or the others, or smaller local businesses in their communities. I mean, it's very interesting. Just if you think about what dry cleaners do and restaurant businesses do, I mean, it's incredible. Home builders. There's so many industries where you can apply math and science technology, which is, of course, our forte, and we are biased to that because we're a science company. We don't know, like we said, but this is our hypothesis. So with that, I just wanted to give one snippet of one area that we work in. I won't take all of the floor because I think there's time for Q&A later on. And I just want to share the time.
Great, thank you. So Joe, I don't know if you want to introduce the video first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So there was a question. There was a question a little earlier about results. So we're going to see a quick clip about results. The Cincinnati Public Schools, over a period 2000 through 2007, went from a high school graduation gap between white and African American kids of 25 points to an elimination of the graduation gap between white and African American kids. During that period, the Ohio State requirements for graduation increased significantly, both in terms of the challenge of the course, the challenge of the tests statewide that students had to take, and the number of statewide tests that the youngsters had to take, which far exceeded No Child Left Behind. There were 8 different areas in which youngsters had to pass exams statewide in order to graduate. I've written about what happened in Cincinnati for Education Week and would be glad to share that, but there were 10 key elements of what happened in Cincinnati, and one of those 10 key elements was that there were very strong school-business partnerships in which, as Penny said earlier, and as you said, it was a win-win proposition. It was not what you sometimes hear in school-business partnerships, which is some educators will say to businesses, we want to have a partnership. You have something we want, give it to us, whether it's money or whether it's people or it's some combination. These are real win-win partnerships that met the criteria that Penny was talking about. So one of the people who was involved, we'd hoped to have here today, but he was unable to join us. He was named earlier this year as the Person of the Week by ABC Nightly News, and we're going to hear a brief 90-second explanation of what happened. Now, everybody in the room who's an educator or everybody in the room who's a business person knows that enormous progress can't be fully summarized in 90 seconds, but this is what ABC did to try to summarize it.
Employed the force of 5 little words.
For years, Cincinnati's Taft High was notorious.
Teachers did not want to teach there.
Dilapidated, crime-ridden, full of failing, forgotten students.
The worst slum school in the city.
So dysfunctional, each clock told a different time. All of them wrong. Then 9 years ago, Taft got a new principal.
Hey, let's hurry up! I don't want to hear it, don't talk.
His name, Anthony Smith, and the motto he brought to Taft, failure is not an option. What does failure is not an option mean?
We're not going to let you fall through the cracks. You going to have an A in that class? A.
First, Smith had to re-energize the teachers.
They were working hard, but working hard in the wrong direction.
Together, they teamed up to monitor every student.
And kids know whether or not you are genuine or if you really, really care about them.
But Smith's most unconventional partnership happened outside the classroom with the hard-charging CEO of the local phone company.
Yeah, I got a motto. It's go big or stay home.
Jack Cassidy was so inspired by Smith's determination, he put his company's name on the line. He promised free cell phones and laptops for every student who maintained a 3.3 average. Fall behind, and they have to give them back.
You know how many laptops and cell phones we've taken back in 9 years? 0.
And Bell employees were encouraged to tutor Taft students at the school during their workday.
Here is a person who's willing to take some time out of their schedule to give us just one more dose of love.
The result, Taft has been transformed. Now the place so many were once afraid to visit is attracting students, like Kenny Fowler, who transferred from one of Cincinnati's other top schools.
It wasn't until I peeked into a class where one of the students was reading one of his essays, and he said he enjoyed a plethora of things. I was like, what does that mean? and they were just high-fiving each other and everything. I was like, wow.
And a school with an almost all-black student body has closed the racial achievement gap. Taft students now outscore white students in Ohio on math, reading, and science.
Graduation rate is now 95%.
10 years ago, it was
18, 12.
And this spring, the old Taft becomes this, a gleaming new $18 million school. We visited with a group of students seeing it for the first time.
And the clock. That works.
You have to look at these children like they're the most important part of your life. And if you do that, you'll be able to replicate it. I can teach you how to be a good teacher. I can't teach you how to care.
So we choose Anthony Smith, 110 students expected to graduate, and virtually all of them attending college this fall, and that's a plethora.
So there's a lot more to say about what happened in Cincinnati, because it wasn't just that one school, and a variety of businesses joined in. And one of the things that you emphasized, which I think is really critical, and Penny emphasized that's critical, is it has to be a win-win situation. And that's what it was, because the changes at Taft, in terms of test scores, in terms of graduation rate, were carefully documented. And people went back to the Cincinnati Bell and said, here is the progress that's being made. So that step by step, people could see increased graduation rates, increased test scores, but a variety of other things, increased participation in extracurricular activities, and it all worked together. It was not any single thing. It was also, as you said, intensive professional development and clear, explicit goals. There were two goals in Cincinnati. First, increase overall graduation rates by at least 20 points. That was exceeded. Secondly, cut the high school graduation gap between white and African American kids in half, and that was also exceeded. What's equally important about what's happened in Cincinnati is that both the Center for School Change and the Gates Foundation have been out of Cincinnati for 3.5 years, and the progress has continued. In fact, there's a new graduation gap in Cincinnati, and it's 1 point, and that's the African Americans are now graduating at a 1.1% higher rate than white students, although both white and African American graduation rates have increased. Now, Penny has given you a number of the theoretical and the research backgrounds. I want to talk a little bit about what I think that this means for business people and what I think it means for educators and most importantly for students. 35 years ago, when I graduated from college, I had a friend who told me that after hundreds of hours in classrooms, after many professors' presentations, after doing a lot of papers, she developed 3 really strong theories about child development. And she was really convinced of these theories, as you can be when you're fresh out of college. Recently, she returned to Minneapolis-St. Paul, where our family lives. She and her boyfriend, then boyfriend, now husband, have 3 children, and she told me that she has no theories about child development. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes not about theories, but about on-the-ground programs that have produced major demonstrable results over a period of 5 to 10 years. And these have been true in both district and charter public schools. It is true that I helped write the nation's first charter. It's also true that I helped to start and work for 7 years in a district public school in St. Paul that is now celebrating its 41st birthday, that was judged by the U.S. Department of Education as a carefully evaluated, proven innovation worthy of national replication. This is about the 14th time I've been in Georgia over the last 40 years, and as I said to Lauren from the governor's office, it's wonderful to hear people saying y'all. I grew up in Kansas, and y'all was one of our favorite terms. So y'all, here are 4 or 5 examples of results. First, you mentioned the idea of tutoring and of giving people time, and this was one of the things that happened in Cincinnati with several of the firms, that they said to their employees, if you will give up X number of hours of your lunch period, we, the company, will match that. Well, what happened? First, employee morale went up significantly, and this was one of their goals, explicitly. The employees felt very proud of the companies that let them do this. This is one of the things that's happened in Minnesota with 3M. And we have seen, based on different studies and different places, between 10 and 40% increases in students' academic achievement when they're given individual attention by corporate people who come in once a week or twice a week over their lunch hour. Obviously, there are many logistics which we can talk about, but we have clear and demonstrable results, both on the student side and, as Penny emphasized, on the corporate side. The corporate people who are involved in this are more proud of their company, and from a corporate point of view, bottom line dollars and cents, they're more likely to stay because they feel this sense of pride. And I don't have to tell any business person or any educator in the room, when you reduce the mobility of your employees, that's a plus. So one of the things that I think we know very clearly is that when businesses and companies work together on tutoring kinds of programs, if it's carefully developed, and that's important, you can't just walk in and think, okay, well, I know how to read, so I'm going to be able to teach a youngster how to read. You have to have instruction. You have to have monitoring, and you have to have the opportunity for the people who are doing the tutoring to get some counseling from time to time. This youngster came in and was swearing at me, or this youngster was inattentive. What are some things that are going on? So as Penny said, the ongoing monitoring is really critical. You can't just start off, give people 4 or 5 days or 4 or 5 hours of instruction about how to be a tutor and think that's it. So there's very clear evidence. You asked for results, and that was a terrific question. There's very clear evidence about the value of tutoring if it has certain criteria, such as, first, some training in the beginning, and secondly, some ongoing assistance to the people who are monitoring, to the people who are doing the tutoring, so that they can get questions answered when things come up that they don't know how to deal with. That's a really classic example. There was an example of dual credit, and we have in this report, and I've brought 20 copies, they're free, and anybody who wants one, I'd be glad to send a PDF of it. My name and email is on the back of this. But we have a number of examples of collaborations that have produced clear and demonstrable results. Here's a second example. This is a rural example. How many folks do we have from rural Georgia in the room? Great. Okay, so there was a town in northern Minnesota named Perham, and they had a problem with their building, specifically with the gym and other parts of the building, but particularly the part of the building which was the gym. And it was old, it was decrepit, and the roof had fallen in. And they were unable to convince, over a period of 5 years, the local taxpayers, because they were facing significant economic strife, they were unable to pass a referendum. But in Perham, what came together was the business community, little town of 3,000, the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, the city of Perham, and the school district came together and said, we don't really have any great place in this town to do physical fitness and exercise. So people are moving to other towns, or they're driving 30 miles away to Detroit Lakes. We have a lot of lakes in Minnesota. They're driving 30 miles away to go to the health center. Let's do one right here. So today in Perham, Minnesota, there is a physical fitness facility that is open from 6 a.m. in the morning until 11 o'clock at night. It triples as the physical fitness facility for the kids in the secondary school, for the townspeople, and for the business people. And it is jointly sponsored, operated, funded by those three entities. And by working together, as Penny said, with a memorandum of agreement, which is constantly monitored and which is constantly refined, they're able to accomplish more. The business community, the city, and the school district are able to accomplish far more than any of them had been able to accomplish over the last decade. Plus, they have had several small businesses move into town. They've retained some businesses because this physical fitness facility, which has a beautiful swimming pool, beautiful weight room, and other kinds of things, it's not available in any other town within a sphere of 20 miles. So it's brought in students, it's brought in families, and it's brought its businesses, using the principles that Penny quite rightly described: memorandums of agreement, constant monitoring, refinement. Third example. We have worked, and I know that your state charter association has worked with members of the business community to do leadership development that involves mentors with both business and educators. And so for the last 5 years, with help from companies like Target and Cargill and Carlson, which owns the Radisson Hotels, we have had business people who've donated their time, an hour a month, to serve as mentors for people in a leadership program that we've developed that involves both district and charter public school folks. Not one or the other, both. And one of the things that I want to pay tribute to the governor today is that, and his staff, is that you've brought district and charter folks together, and that seems to me is one of the waves of the future. All the wisdom is not on one side or the other. We've run for the last 3 years a leadership academy that involves both district and charter folks, and that's worked out well because the guiding principle is, how can we help kids? Not try to debate which is better, district or charter. So in this leadership academy, we have business people, and they've served as mentors, and they've served as mentors for free. And one of the things that Penny talked about was the importance of continuous monitoring. So we have done that a good deal, and here are two examples of what we've learned. First, we started off by saying, when people asked us, well, what would you talk about? We said, well, you know, we'll let you talk about whatever you want to talk about. Well, after the end of the first year, one of the suggestions that people made was, based on importance of evaluation, they said, you know, it'd really be good to have a list of topics each month for us to discuss. We may depart from that, but it would be good to have an outline. Secondly, we want to be clear about what the expectations are. Are we expected to go to the business person's, to the business each month to meet? Is it appropriate to have an expectation that at least once during the year the business person will visit the school? So for the second and third years, we have had more explicit expectations because, as Penny said, continuous refinement, continuous improvement is a central part of both the business world and the education world. So we did monitor it, and based on that, we've improved it. We've had wonderful responses from both the educators and the businesses. A fourth example that's on here is the promotion of certain kinds of skills, knowledge, values. And General Electric is a wonderful example of a company that really wants to have more young people who know about math, who know about science, and who value it. Well, I can't speak about Georgia, but I can tell you that there is a lot of promotion in Minnesota and many other states for youngsters who have strong athletic skills. Is this a factor here in Atlanta and in Georgia where you have lots of promotion of athletic skills? Okay, so we have worked in Minnesota with a number of businesses, including the High Tech Council, that is interested in the promotion of math skills and biology skills and science skills. And a local company has published a document, which is referenced on here, and you can look it up on the web, of more than 90 different competitions that celebrate academic and artistic skill. And this is being widely distributed, but it's also important to understand that there is a statewide tournament for math teams, and part of the awards come from the state or from some of the local corporations because they know it is in their economic interest to have more youngsters interested in, knowledgeable about math and science. And this has been going on for a number of years, and a number of the youngsters who've been on the statewide math teams have stayed in the state, have gone to work for some of our high-tech companies. So one of the things that I think is really important is to get over the phenomenon. How many of you saw a movie some years ago about youngsters who skipped school one beautiful spring day, Ferris Bueller's Day Off? How many of you saw that movie? Okay, well, Ferris Bueller's Day Off was seen on average in the 6 years from the time it was released, was seen between 4 and 5 times by the average 12 to 18-year-olds. Now, the central message of Ferris Bueller's Day Off is school is boring, teachers are dumb, kids who like to study are nerds, and assistant principals, and I was an inner city public school assistant principal, and inner city public school administrators are kind of really stupid. So you think about this message, which is constantly be given to kids. School is boring, teachers are dumb, kids who like to study are nerds. We need to counter that. Well, one of the things that's happened in Minnesota and some other states is that corporations have joined with educators and parents to sponsor contests and to help get publicity out about youngsters who do like math, who do like science, who excel in it. There's nothing wrong with promoting high school sports. I was a high school and a college athlete. There's nothing wrong with that, but it also makes sense if we're interested in making progress as a country to promote artistic accomplishment and academic accomplishment. How many people agree with that? Okay, so this is an area where educators and business people can work together, and the kids need to get the message. We did an analysis of 4 television stations in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area several years ago, and we found that for every 1 minute over a 4-month period that was spent on talking about high school academics or high school artistic accomplishment, between 30 and 40 minutes was spent talking about high school sports. That's got to change because the kids are getting the message. We also did an analysis of the 2 major newspapers in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And in one case, they decided, one of the newspapers, the second largest newspaper in the state, decided to run a section every spring, similar to what they did every fall and every winter. I don't know about the newspapers in your state, but in the newspapers in our state, there are large sections at the beginning of the football and basketball and also hockey, which I think is bigger in Minnesota than it is here, describing the outstanding student athletes. Do you have something like that in many newspapers here? Okay. So based on some feedback that they got from educators and parents, the second largest newspaper in the state of Minnesota decided to run a section each spring that describes the 10 outstanding graduates from each public and private and parochial school in the East Metro area, which is St. Paul and its suburbs. There are many other examples on here. I want to emphasize that I think, as Penny said, there are 5 basic principles. First, you need to be clear about what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I'm a big fan on focus. I'm a big fan over many years working with both district and charter public schools and having a handful of measurable results, not all of which have to be tied to test scores. Improved attendance, improved achievement on the business side, improved retention of employees, improved morale, but a handful of measurable goals, as Penny suggested. Second, a continuous assessment, and third, refinement. In business, they don't just measure, they refine, they change, they modify, right, business people? Right? So the tests are not just there to have something reported every 6 or 9 months so people can say, gotcha. The tests are there to help us modify, to understand, and to improve so that we do a better job. One of the things that we've done with both district and charter public schools is to ask people to survey their graduates. And when I was in a school, when we did that, we refined our program based on the assessment. We didn't do enough writing. We didn't have the kids do enough writing. And we heard that very loudly and clearly from some youngsters when they did the graduate survey. So we did that. So the third key point, once again, that Penny has emphasized is the importance of not only assessing but refining. The fourth key point that we have discovered is that it's important to celebrate progress. There will always be challenges. There will always be problems. But hopefully there's also progress. So for example, I was at a charter public school that's described in this booklet, and they're both district and charter public schools that are described in this booklet, where they have a Gambate award. Gambate is a Japanese term that translates into English as stay at it, keep going. And every morning, these people learned from Japanese business, these people at this school, they had an assembly for 15 minutes in this school to honor youngsters who were persisting, who had made progress. Came directly from some of the highest quality product manufacturing in Japan, where there are awards constantly for making progress. So the fourth is to celebrate progress. In our leadership development program, we've given out certificates, we've given out awards, we have gone to newspapers and publicly acknowledged the business people who've been involved in this. I've gone into some businesses and seen the certificates that we've given to people framed. People like to be thanked. People like to be acknowledged. It may sound like a modest thing, but my sense is that in today's society we could do a little bit more of thanking people for something that's real. So that's the fourth key thing. And the final thing is to build on the strengths of each and to recognize that businesses have not just cash, but they also have people. And there are a number of examples on this list of when businesses have provided services, not just cash, but services to people. We have, for example, a major multinational corporation that we're working with now, where some of their senior executives are serving as coaches for people in our leadership program. We have another corporation that doesn't have anybody doing coaches, but they have training that they've developed for their store leaders, and they have adapted it for education. We've recently done it, and 100% of the 40 people who participated, 100% said that they were instantly saw something in the day-long training that they could use to apply to improve student achievement. So many years ago, I worked with some policymakers around the United States, and the first question I asked them was, what do you want to accomplish? And some of them said, well, we want to get the United States and our schools back to the good old days. So I asked them this question. I asked them what percentage of youngsters graduated in the 1920s, which is what they thought were the good old days. So I'll ask you to raise your hands. How many of you think in the 1920s about 90% of the kids graduated from our public high schools? How many of you think it was 80%? How many of you think it was 70%? How many of you think it's 60%? 50%? Getting some hands? 40%? 30%? 24%? That's what it was. Now, I'm with Moms Mabley. Some of you are with Moms Mabley, know about Moms Mabley. Moms is a sort of a philosopher, and Mom says, the good old days, I was there. Where were they? The reality in Georgia is that you and your governor have taken an important step forward by saying, let's stop having the debate about which is better, charter or district. That seems to me to be a totally meaningless debate, by the way. It's a little bit like saying which gets better gas mileage, a rented car or a leased car. We are big fans at our center. The National Governors Association is a big fan of excellent public education. Your governor has taken a step by saying, let's bring people together to learn from each other. Your state has won a national grant, which we're jealous of in Minnesota because you won it and we didn't. You have this marvelous opportunity created by your governor, by your state, and by your educators and business people with Race to the Top. So I would say the good old days, I don't know about them, but I think you have good new days, opportunities to build on the strengths that you have, the wisdom, the opportunities, and I want to thank both the educators and the business people for being here today.